I used to be in music, so I was a recording artist back in the early 90s, and we were going to do like a first video ever for that, and I had all sorts of high ambitions on who I wanted to do that, and then my record company boss said, hey, you have $2,000, figure it out. So I realized I had to do it myself, but it wasn't, utterly out of the blue, because I've done, I come from photography, I've done a lot of other things, and I figured, slightly foolishly, that I could, but I got into it there, and weirdly enough, instantaneously, literally fell in love with it. And I've been doing music for a long time, and pretty much on that shoot day I realized that this is what I want to do. So I continued making videos for myself, and then friends were asking, and then friends of friends, and then more and more I enjoyed that, and that kind of it didn't replace my love for music, but it replaced some other needs and urges. So I decided actually literally to leave music behind and continue with directing. A script was lying on my desk one day, as they do. There's a lot of scripts in the world of filmmaking, and the thing is that most of them are not very good. But just by the title, I got very intrigued, because I knew that would be something that interests me. I like stuff that has darkness and a certain hopelessness, and aspects of even nihilism in it, and that got me interested. But then also I'm old enough to vividly remember when it happened. So there was already sort of a narrative for me to sort of hook on to. So I just jumped over the script, and like with all these things, it starts with the script, and the script was very, very good. I had just come back from a very similar type of limited series in Eastern Europe, actually longer. So it was a bit of a conflict between me, and I have a very large family, to sort of even allow myself to be interested in something with all the ramifications it has in my life. That's the downside with filmmaking, is that it always involves a lot of travel and long travels and all that. Fortunately enough, our kids are small enough to still be mobile, and my wife and I spoke about it, and then we realized we just had to do it. I mean, doing these kind of projects involve a lot of different stages of it. What was very interesting for me, this is the first time I've ever done something that is based on facts. Very much, you're telling a real story. And coming into this, where I came from, sort of a fiction lover on a lot of levels, I felt that like let the drama sort of govern the situation here. And first time upon reading the script, I was talking to Craig, the writer, and I said, "Oh, this is great. So how much of this is true?" And he said, "Everything." Right there, my mind was blown, because obviously my knowledge about the Chernobyl catastrophe was limited to what everybody else knew. But upon reading this script, you understand that it's just a fraction of the magnitude and the tragedy and this incredible event on so many levels. So going from being a fiction person who wouldn't give a fuck about whether something was true or not, I've now become the opposite. I'm only interested in real, true things. And upon embarking on this, I started reading everything I could ever come over. Craig had already done a lot of research and actually sort of made a good sort of file of stuff that one could look into. So it was a good start. There was a lot of books to read and a lot of films to watch and so on. And then I just continued. I couldn't stop. I was so immersed in it and so interested in everything. It becomes more and more personal. You want to read individual stories. You want to sort of feel what they felt and so on. So I think I've read everything there is on the subject, including some quite boring sort of nuclear engineering stuff, but I just had to understand everything. I always feel pressure in doing anything for myself. One of the main things in many art forms is to make it as difficult as you possibly can for yourself, and to not take any easy routes and not sort of follow some path of least resistance, rather the opposite. The only pressure I ever feel is for myself. It became for me about the truthfulness, of course, but also sort of the individual emotional authenticity of it. You want it to feel experiential and real rather than as a fictionized or a drama, even if it's based on real events. For me, it's about making it as experiential as ever possible, so that you, rather than watching it through normal filters of film and drama, and that's why I also got increasingly interested in it. It's more about feeling the realness and feeling the authenticity of the people we meet, the situations, and all of that. So it was very much about finding a path down something very difficult, desperately avoiding any tropes or anything that is sort of. There's a lot of filmmaking in which the references are from films, but I'm not like that at all, and I don't like that. So there's this sort of constant sort of movement towards referring to reality rather than to the world of films in everything. Again, I sort of started out in photography, so for me the image is very important, not necessarily from an aesthetical point of view, but from how the image makes you feel. And I mean, I guess it's just personal taste that I very much like, sort of some type of raw authenticity, but still with a photographic quality to it. I like the image adding a layer of emotions to it, how this image is made and how we do that. And then it becomes into sort of film school stuff, which deals with what is the eye, who's watching, and how do we enhance the sense of us participating in this rather than looking at it from the outside, but whilst also making beautiful images. So it's, for me, that aspect of filmmaking is something I'm very comfortable with based on where I kind of come from, and I that's not something that particular bit comes very natural to me, and there's very few questions from me. It's just instinctively I know exactly what I want there. And then I had the pleasure and the privilege to work with a Swedish DOP that we both have tried to work with each other for many, many years, and it never worked out. And then just by some very strange serendipity, it worked out this time. And not only did it work out, it was a phenomenal partnership in terms of sensibilities and sort of this sort of Scandinavian, I don't want to say austerity, but there's a minimalism to some extent in how we deal with the photographic language. Yeah, it's a massive question. I'll just take one advice out of many, but I think it has to do with idiosyncrasy. To as a director, as any form of artist, whether you write music or write books or poetry or making film, you have to have a voice that is singularly your own, because there is no such thing as an arbitrary quality as a director or as any artist. Even if you're young enough to not trust your own personal choices, because when you're younger you tend not to, that's maybe the most important thing ever, because whenever I meet students or I meet young filmmakers, the only thing that interests me is a unique voice. Everything else can be taught, and what you want is that, from the onset that you allow yourself to be free enough to dig where you stand and to use your own references and experiences and trust in the way something makes you feel, and not about like, people are probably going to like this, but sort of just go down to your own feelings and be brave and very bold and all of that, and take massive, massive risks. That's the only thing. I mean, that's one of about a million pieces of advice I can give, but that one is a pretty good one, I think.